listen, I guess we can start off here.
Hmm.
Because I watch all your videos, especially the ones that that came post me finding your TikTok page,
Uh-huh.
and I look at all your comments. I apologize for those people in advance. Listen, I'll just start off here and say that like internet lefties, like chronically online lefties,
Hmm.
are the worst.
Okay.
Okay,
I appreciate that.
as a chronically online lefty, let me tell you that we're the worst people. So don't a lot of and I guess I can that just kind of rolls me right into it, and then we'll like bounce off this conversation.
Hmm.
I think a lot of lefties get so caught up in like you leave high school, right? Oh God, now and I think now for like the Gen Zers, they have these conversations in high school, but for at least for our generation more so. How old are you?
I'm 25. 20,
Okay,
wait,
yeah. So
26? I don't know. I don't know my age. I'm like 25.
I'm also 25. You know,
Okay.
I know it starts to
Sure.
lose you after a
I
while.
graduated in
Yeah. So
2014, so that's the only.
same. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
sick.
So for us, politics was like talked about when we were in high school, but
Hmm.
not like now. Like these
For
kids are
sure.
having full blown. So you leave college and then you figure out what like theory is for like a lot of kids who come into like the Marxist Leninist or greater communism, Marxism, theory and whatnot, and you want everybody to know about it,
Hmm.
right? And I think that since a lot of the information then that you start going to stops being CNN, MSNBC, it stops being those sources and starts to be more so, just like YouTube and old videos of theorists and whatnot talking about stuff. You start to forget that politics actually exists for like the majority of Americans, if not the world, in a completely different ecosphere than it exists for a lot of people on the left.
I,
I
I
think that. No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I absolutely agree. I sometimes get super frustrated when people really want to get focused in on theory and like getting
Mm,
super invested into like, oh, this specifically is like socialism will solve everything if we like have the workers on the means of production. And for a lot of
mm.
people, like politics in a very real sense is a lot more about just like I need healthcare. I need
Right.
um like they don't really care about the economic production of the relationship with their owner. They're just like
Mm.
I want enough money to live and survive
I
in
don't
this
want to
world.
die tomorrow. I'm
Exactly.
hungry. I would
Exactly.
like food,
Yeah.
right?
I,
And I
I
think
want
that if
unemployment benefits so that if I lose my job, I'll be okay. And though
right,
that's so much more of a high priority in so many people's minds than,
mm,
the workers owning the means of production, honestly.
right,
And I
right.
sometimes I understand why socialists can get so frustrated when they don't see a lot of politicians advocating for the policies that they're sort of interested in. But
Mm.
those policies are not very popular, honestly. People want
Right.
healthcare.
They're not.
Like,
They're not. They're not. Yeah. So you start to forget that. And obviously, I'm not. I 100%. Believe in. I'm a full blown anarcho socialist, and we can get into that
I'd
definition
love
later.
to. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. Yeah. But I also recognize that you can't just start off a conversation, with somebody who let's not even say somebody who watches CNN every day. Just like let's take for example, let's just like uh you know uh like a 35-year-old manager at like let's say like a local bank or something like that,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
They probably keep up with the news every now and then. Let's say they have kids, so they're more so trying to just keep up with what's going on in their kids. And this is assuming that this person is like middle class, right? So
Sure.
like that's
Yeah.
already, more in line with, the political process because people just have more time to keep up with these things
Absolutely.
than a lot of Americans. So then this person, let's say they have kids, so they're probably just keeping up with, what their kids are learning at school and whatnot. And let's say that this is a straight person and they have like a spouse, so they're not really worried about what's happening with like queer politics or anything like that. um this person, I can't start a conversation off with this person by saying, hey, you bank manager, your job practices in the threat and the theft of the proletariat because you're setting up a system that that is coercive by definition, and
Hmm.
you should stop doing that so that and join my co-op nonprofit bank in which we can lend out money and revolutionize the yeah, I've
It
gotten bored of that
absolutely.
sentence already. I'm
This.
I'm done with that sentence. I hate it, and I don't want to listen to you anymore. Get away from me. How did you get into my house?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. And I think so. This analogy strikes real close home to me because my partner's dad actually is like he's not a manager of like a bank, but he's a pretty high up at like a credit union essentially.
mm,
And we have these conversations all the time because he's a very conservative, straight white man.
yeah,
And we don't start the conversation there. We talk politics all the time, and sometimes I think that's lacking in a lot of like soup terminally online leftists, as we want to call it, is
mm,
conversations with conservatives because that will completely
yeah,
alter your worldview and like
yeah,
recognize these people aren't necessarily villains or even misinformed.
right,
Well, no, they're misinformed, but
yeah,
they're
but
misinformed.
yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what
Yeah,
you're saying.
like I think that sometimes their worldview just doesn't extend outside of their circle of influence, their home. They're like, I care about my
Right,
family, and my family isn't queer. He doesn't know
right,
that, but um,
yeah, yeah,
um, like my family isn't people of color. My family is white. These are the issues that I care about, and I don't think he just
right,
has that recognition of like looking outside of his circle of influence. And that's something that I really like having conversations with, which is just like, oh, let's look at other people, and we talk about like the pros and cons of Ronald Reagan. Like that sort of like
mm,
base level liberal versus conservative talk. We don't get
right,
into these like really high level co-ops
right,
versus like the means of production in the economic senses.
right.
And I yeah. So I
I
think
just,
that
I just think,
yeah,
no,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay, I just think that even though I fully am on board, and I guess we can just get into it now. I definitely don't think that current liberal capitalism answers a lot of the questions that people. I'm not saying it answers the questions that people are asking. I'm saying that it doesn't answer the questions that people aren't asking because they don't even know that they should be asking those questions.
Sure.
I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
My and I won't I'll just say a family member so I don't social dox anybody.
Sure.
I have a family member and he's not into I don't think I don't have on record before this past election this guy ever voted.
Hmm.
He probably has, but he's not like the before the 2020 election.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever voted because we just never talked about it, right?
Hmm.
And he's 51 years old, my
Sure.
family member.
Okay.
Uh Soon to be 52. But no, yeah, he is 52. Yeah, he's 52. Anyway, so he works at a I'll just say a popular delivery service
Okay.
um company with three letters in it. And and he was asking, why cuz in I in people who, see this will probably know. I'm from the east southeast of Florida specifically, and we have a high Hispanic population down here.
Hmm.
Um, and he was asking, what's with like all of these Hispanics just owning all of this stuff, right? And like because he's not racist, so
Sure.
because we're black, so he wasn't a big Trump person, but he
Sure.
was like, at least running through his mind, kind of like the conspiracy theory that a lot of conservatives have, where the Hispanics are coming in and
Coming
they're
in
taking all of our jobs and whatnot.
1000%. Yeah, and they're altering our
Right. So
elections and yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's like, well, all these Hispanic dudes work here, and they have like these cars that are like a lot nicer than mine. Like,
Hmm.
what's going on with that? And I said, it's interesting that you say that because the exact same line of processing, this exact line of thinking was exactly what broke unions back in the 30s and the 40s when like socialism was actually kind of popular in America and there were a
Hmm.
lot of unions going on, and it was more so not based on any type of means of production work. It was just vast strength in unions. Like the
Yeah.
unions were stronger than ever, but they got destroyed because these capitalists were like, ah, crap, we gotta break these unions up. What can we do? oh yeah, let's just tell all of these white people who make up the majority of our workforce that these blacks and these Mexicans are going to
Absolutely. No, of
are not
course.
trustworthy and whatnot.
Of
So
course.
I'm telling him the story and whatnot, and I think that we need to focus a lot more on story because I think that's what a lot more people gravitate towards than theory. But anyway, I'm just telling him the story, and he's saying, yeah, 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 and I'm like, it's not your fellow employee who's the problem. Like, why isn't your boss paying you more money?
For
Like,
sure.
what's going on with that relationship? And
For
then we
sure.
start going deep, and then we start going to, well, he needs to make his money or whatnot. And I was like, hmm, wouldn't things be a little bit better? And this is kind of when we start going into the weeds. I'm like, wouldn't things be a little bit better if all the people that work there had a lot more decision making when it came into what actually goes on at the company? Because he's been working in this industry for quite a long time, and he's been working in this type of industry basically his whole life. And he has a million and one ideas that don't make it past his supervisor because
Mm-hmm.
they don't listen to people at his level.
Mm-hmm.
Where if in a system that's, more towards something that I like,
Sure.
he would be listened to a lot more and his voice would actually mean something. Just stories like that so that we can connect the two. But to bring the conversation back, I didn't start that conversation with, all right, a family member, here's state and capital, here's the Communist Manifesto,
Sure.
here's Engels,
No,
here's
absolutely.
Lenin,
Yeah. And
go
like
and do some research.
I
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many times I've tried to begin Das Kapital. It's too
yeah.
thick. Like Communist
No,
Manifesto,
don't read.
I'll breeze
Don't
through
read
that.
Das
That's like
Kapital.
10 pages. Like
Don't
sure.
don't read Capital. Don't read
Yeah.
Capital.
Like it's too much. It's too
It's
much.
too much. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Theory's dumb.
I like communicating, and I appreciate anyone who reads Capital and is willing to talk to me about it. And I've talked to a lot of people about it, but like,
Right.
it's a lot. It's too much for me, at least. But this is really interesting. That I something that I think about a lot is the sort of I would consider myself a social democrat, probably, or some form of liberal. But I wouldn't disagree with anything that you were saying here. I absolutely think that we should strengthen unions. I absolutely think that we need to have a more expansive and more like elaborate welfare system so that people can like rely on. We can essentially like even out these incredible what's the term negotiating powers, because
Right.
the worker has none currently, and I
Hmm.
fully agree with all of that. And I guess I just sometimes I feel like I describe myself as a social democrat, and people put me in the box of
Yeah, they think you're
Hillary
you
Clinton.
say yeah, they say that you're like Clinton, and some people will just call you fully like Reagan. Like if
Yeah,
you're like
yeah,
any left,
exactly.
like if you're any more right than Bernie Sanders, then you're basically
But
just like Reagan.
here's the thing.
Like
I would
yeah,
even put myself left of Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders is not a
mm.
socialist, right?
No, he's not.
Like
No.
anyone who describes himself as a socialist in any sort of like political sphere, they're not really like India Walton, who's the Buffalo mayor, or at least I think she is not the current Buffalo
Yeah,
mayor, but she's
she ran.
yeah,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
ran.
I know exactly who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
She's I love every position that she has, and I fully agree
Mm,
with her. She
mm.
considers herself a socialist, but she doesn't talk about the means of production at all. She
Because she
talks
can't.
about. I mean, sure,
Yeah.
but
Well, when
like
I say that she can't, I'm not saying that she's like mask on or whatnot. I'm just
I
saying
hear what
that
you're saying.
it's just unproductive to do so. Why talk about literally why even get into that conversation?
I hear that, but what I would also say is if she's not talking about the means of production, isn't she just a social democrat? Isn't she just on my side? Isn't she just the same like the same viewpoints as me if she's not pushing for this like revolutionary thinking in terms of like socialism? If she's just pushing all of these
Mm,
liberal policies, isn't she just the same as a liberal? And I'm okay with that because I would say I think India Walton is fantastic.
mm,
I think she's great. But sometimes I feel like we poison the well of the idea of socialists in that it
mm.
means whether or not you care about workers. And I have a lot of like nitpicky frustrations with like communism or like full blown ownership of the means of production. I feel like it would be
Right.
difficult to implement, and I also don't think that it would be beneficial necessarily to all the workers. But I'm
Well, I
all
guess
in.
let's. I mean, and we can get into that. Give me. I guess your like top three, so we don't
Sure,
spend the whole time doing it. Just like so
for
we can just
sure.
run through it real quick. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
so
we'll agree on a lot more than we disagree. So
sure.
give them to me.
What I would say is the top two. So the first thing
Mm,
is that any sort of study that's been done about co-ops doesn't look
mm,
into non-voluntary co-ops because all
right,
all co-ops currently worldwide have been made voluntarily. So we don't know what it would look
right,
like to just have to force essentially to ban capital owners and to just have the workers own the means of production
right.
without like a voluntary or systematic process. So just forcing all businesses to operate that way, we don't know exactly what would happen or what that economy would look like. And the
Mm,
second thing is I don't see what's wrong with liberalism. Like I don't I personally I talk to so many socialists and I feel like I don't really understand with what is wrong with my system where the bargaining powers are essentially equalized, where there's a welfare system so the
right,
worker doesn't die if they don't, have a job, where unions are
right.
organized so they still have a democratic say in what occurs because they can all just leave at whatever time and it's all organized in that method. I guess
Mm.
I would have to be convinced what's so like
Great
detrimental.
about socialism, right? Or what's so bad about liberalism?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
essentially, especially because I think we can both agree that liberalism is more feasible amongst people. Like more people would be gravitated towards like a Sweden style
Hmm.
socialist style or that style of
Yeah,
socialism, which
soft
isn't really
type.
socialism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah,
yeah, but that's
there's
what I would
there's
ascribe to. I feel
I'll
like
drop the common communist line right now. There is no country in the world that is fully
sure.
communist
No, no, and I would agree.
or
I would
socialist.
agree with that.
Yeah,
I feel like I use your guys' terminology, and then
yeah.
here's kind of a hot take that I have that I don't know how much you'd agree, but I feel like
Mhm.
maybe 20-30% of the socialist movement are just
Mhm.
Socdems who just consider Norway socialist. That's
You
I don't
know
know.
what? I don't have hardcore numbers on that, but I wouldn't put any money on you being wrong.
Okay, I
Uh,
yeah, because like we look
so
at like
yeah,
AOC,
you're
Bernie
probably right.
Sanders, India
Yeah,
Walton,
yeah, yeah.
all of these people who consider themselves
Yeah,
socialists, who like are
if
members of
AO,
DSA.
if AOC and Bernie are socialists, then you're a socialist
Yeah,
and Joe
exactly.
Biden's a socialist.
Sure,
And, and
sure.
as much as the conservatives love to say that Joe Biden is like this socialist, Marxist, deep
Of
communist, I,
course,
I wish.
for
I
sure,
wish.
for
Oh
sure.
my God.
I wish he were more like liberal. Honestly, he's fairly. I mean, he's conservative in a couple
He's
areas. I
pretty
would push him.
conservative.
I would
Yeah.
push him. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm happy with my vote. I think he's
Yeah.
incredibly better than
Oh
Donald
no, I'm
Trump.
not. I'm not a Bernie or Buster in the slightest.
It's,
In the
yeah,
slightest bit.
sick.
No.
So yeah, I guess
Um.
I don't understand the problem with my system, and I would love to hear because I just want what's best for the workers at the end of the day. I want what's best for
Yeah.
people. I want what's best for minorities. I want what's best for everyone. And I guess I see liberalism as the best system.
So let's target the first one because I think this one will be the quickest. No voluntary co-ops.
Hmm.
Um. We didn't, and this is for anybody watching this back or watching it live or whatnot. This is gonna sound a little bit over the top, but we didn't necessarily know how kings and lords not ruling directly over serfs was going to work out,
Sure, sure,
right? But we were like, monarchy is like not good, so let's
sure,
not do that anymore.
sure.
We didn't exactly know how slaves, literally my family members
Hmm.
were going to make it after, post slavery, right? I
Sure,
mean, we had some examples because, in the North, things were a lot more just, full blown regular capitalism. And then in the South, they still had the slavery, but we didn't fully know what those things were going to look like,
sure.
right?
I
But we were like, well, slavery needs to end. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not saying that capitalism is fully like chattel slavery. That's
sure,
not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that we have a system in which there is a coercive just by the nature of I have a lot of money, you have no money, you need job to live type of, relationship. And that is a relationship that, at least for people of my, economic theory framework or economic philosophy framework, is not a great relationship to have, because we have hundreds of years of history in which, we can see that this system has killed and or left starving, millions and millions and millions of people.
Sure.
So towards the non-voluntary end of things, it would be basically as non-voluntary as telling somebody that they're not a slave anymore, or telling a serf that you don't have to pay a lord anymore.
You know what?
Um, I think I think that what you're alluding to, and you would be correct, if let's say that we told every Walmart employee that now 10% of their paycheck had to go towards, your ownership of your piece of Walmart or
Hmm.
whatever. But good thing that's not what I'm saying at all.
Sure.
Um, and you are right in that a non-voluntary system into that type of framework would be, not only would it be wild, but it will be incredibly unpopular, and the whatever bill or law or amendment or whatever would die before it even hit the ground. So to that end, I would say that things would have to walk a lot slower than, okay, we're going to do socialism like as in Monday, and then Tuesday we fire all the CEOs.
Sure.
That's not
Sure.
what I'm saying at all.
Sure.
And I think that anybody who does think that a type of system like that would work is honestly insane, and they have a very weird grasp on both economics and how people work in general.
Hmm. And like electoralism in like in general on it, because I sometimes get frustrated that like people don't want to engage with the politics of democracy. But what I'll say is, I would fully agree. I'll actually take back my criticism of the fact that it hasn't worked out, because you make a good point that like if people's lives aren't working out, sometimes you got to just like throw a stone at the building and you're like, maybe it's going to come crashing down. We'll see what happens. We can see what we can rebuild. I can lean towards that argument. I can see that a lot.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like the autocracy was in, like, France is a perfect example. The autocracy wasn't working and people were dying, and sometimes you got to topple the system. I get that. I guess what I'm saying is that like I sometimes I don't want to draw too close of a comparison to what we are going on to France. I see that it's an analogy. I'm not saying you're saying
Yeah.
it's the same,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I also think that there is something really important about having a democracy already built up,
Mhm.
where you can have your voice be heard, and
Mhm.
like there's such a perfect avenue that we can already utilize in order to like
Yeah.
get our policies restricted than throwing a rock in the building. And maybe you're not even advocating for that. Maybe I'm.
No, I'm not. So, and
Mm-hmm,
and I guess, and I'll tie this into my answer with, what's wrong with liberalism or
mm-hmm,
whatnot. Let's say that I was the president tomorrow.
sure.
Here's what I would do to start, enacting my socialist paradise or
Okay.
whatever. I would start drafting up laws to make it quite literally illegal for any company to make moves towards anti-union anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, so what Amazon is pulling right now with the Amazon labor union would be illegal.
Absolutely.
What Walmart does a whole bunch towards their unions would be illegal.
Mm-hmm.
I would push for the creation of actually a department of unions, like how we have like the EPA and the FDA. There would be quite literally a federal department for unions that
Yeah.
actually funds state departments for unions, so each state can have them. Break that down to the local level,
Mm-hmm.
and then fund those things, and then let those local chapters actually figure out, whether it be sectorially, whether it be for certain companies that they have, how those actual unions, how people can get into those unions and whatnot, and actually figure out how those things can happen. This basically this federal, state, and local union department would quite literally just be for people finding out about, having a place to find out about unions in their local areas, find out about national, state, or local sectorial unions. So let's say that there is, electricians, plumbers, IT workers like myself. You'd be able to find those things, and then also as a way to report different violations against said law that I created. So if your boss is giving you or any type of pushback towards, you joining a union, then you would be able to go there, fill out paperwork, and then it will be handled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Why am I doing this? Because we need to actually have people figure out, because, and I guess anybody who's been keeping up with politics, the word dialectical materialism or material conditions gets thrown out a lot, but
Yeah.
nobody knows what it means. This is
Yeah.
what it actually means to give people better, material conditions to work
Sure.
with. People need to actually know, and by people, I just mean everyday Joes, need to get a taste of what having a democratic say at a company looks like. They need to understand how collaborative work looks like, and that needs to be understood before we make a larger national push towards any type of socialist system.
Sure.
Um,
Uh,
I would
may,
increase. Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to be clear. Like, maybe we're talking past each other, but like, I would fully
Hmm.
be on board with all of the things that you're
Yeah.
saying right now. And like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I just want to make sure that like where my position is like is understood that like I love this, and I feel like that's absolutely something that I would push for is like some sort of like guaranteed unions and huge protections amongst
Right.
discussing your income to your employees, or to
Right.
organize without it being shut down without your like with your boss. There's like huge amount of protections that the government can do to protect workers, and I'm all for that. Sorry, keep going. I just want to make sure that like I'm all board.
I believe on the how we would improve the conditions of the workers.
Hmm.
From your videos, and I guess anybody who wants, more info on that, we don't have to give it to you all right now. Just visit Staxium's TikTok
Hey,
page, and then you'll get plenty of that.
I appreciate
Because
that.
yeah, yeah, no problem. They do a really good job of explaining their positions. But I guess on the why doesn't liberalism, what's wrong with liberalism or whatnot.
Uh-huh.
Um, Socially, I don't see much wrong with liberalism.
Okay.
If to be, socially liberal, to have a greater, appreciation for people's, protected classes as far as, race, gender, sex, LGBTQIA plus status, or whatever type of religious rights or whatnot. I think that socially, nobody really on anything really like left of center is really complaining on that. As
Hmm.
far as the economic ends, where I see liberalism, and I'll more so say neoliberalism because that's really where my criticism
Sure.
is more so with the fundamental relationship that capital and those who own things, how they have a greater slice of political control than just the normal person.
Shh.
um,
Okay.
Democratically, and I'll explain that.
Yeah.
Democratically, I have one vote, right?
Yeah.
I can just go and vote, but Elon Musk can just walk into buildings of just walk into government and then just kind of throw himself around. We see this with state governments, with Jeff Bezos basically having state governments, basically hold a pageant contest to see where the next Amazon factories are going to go. We see this with a whole bunch of examples. I won't get into all of that, but democratically, those who own things quite literally just have more power than those who don't own things. And I would like to see an ending of a system where those who, where politically the power just lies in those who own things rather, people who don't own things. I guess that's as broad as I would put that. The neoliberal type of way of handling uh, economics, especially we see abroad with the World Bank and the IMF. We see, exactly what that relationship is doing to countries in Africa or countries in Asia or South America, where, if your country is failing, probably because you got invaded by some type of
Yeah.
Western country in your past,
Sure.
um, you basically have to be, how can I say this in the nicest way possible? You basically have to be, make your country as wonderful of a, resting place for Western business or whatever type of large power business that there is, whether that be giving extremely charitable deals for business, lowering, minimum wages in your country, giving away, materials and labor and the whole situation. It's just not great, of what we do to these countries, and that's why the neoliberal agenda of profit over everything economically, and I know that's not what you believe,
Sure.
but we see with how our government basically handles something like right now, like with the patent for COVID, right? Just putting it up for sale instead of just releasing it to, for free. That's not necessarily a socialist or communist, handling of that situation. That's just capitalism doing what capitalism do, basically putting profit over people. And as long as we have a system that encourages putting profit over people, we can have people be nice, and say that we're going to do all these humanitarian things because we care. But I don't, need to bank on nice people. I just need there to be a better system, where the motive of people doing things is actually just to do them instead of it being a profit motive.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I'm gonna write just a couple things down. There was
Yeah, yeah,
one
no
more
problem.
thing that I wanted to write. Yeah. Okay. So, a couple things. I actually have a question for you before I go, because I
Okay.
would agree with about like 95% of what you said. I'm
Hmm.
gonna push back on just a couple things.
What's
Um,
up?
the first question that I have, I guess, is what, like, would you consider co-op socialism? Like, would you consider that like
Worker
anti-capitalism?
co-ops?
Yeah, like worker co-ops guarantee 100% of all
Uh,
businesses. Like, what is your prescription of socialism? Like, what is your ideal society? I guess is a better question.
um, one in which the people who work have a democratic say in what happens with the fruits of their labor. Where, however that breakdown happens, whether it be through direct ownership, whether it be through worker co-ops. Worker co-ops are kind of the, greatest example in, our current economy of how that works, but that can work in any different type of way. It would be more so projects that are um, funded by the welfare state, for example, a larger emphasis on community farming and community vegetation so that communities themselves can, provide for the food for themselves. It would be greater projects in obviously education, larger focus on housing, obviously, kind of the socialist dream of decommodification. So things such as food, housing, I guess the internet is like an essential thing that a lot of people have.
Sorry, is it
Water, shelter.
decommodification of just those essential goods? Right? You're okay with like commodification of like
De-
of games or something?
Xboxes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, so you commodify your luxury goods as
Sure.
much as possible.
Sure.
That can be left up to the market, whatever. But when it comes to things that people actually need to survive, such as food, shelter, water, et cetera, medicine, education, I will put on that list as well.
Sure.
Then those things can literally not be left up to the market because, as you and I experienced when we were kids, 2008 cannot happen again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I get like here before I get into that, I guess I'm just curious. How is your position different from Bernie Sanders?
It's not. Not
Okay.
on
All
the
right.
not on the well, the things that Bernie doesn't go that far.
Where does he
It's
not go
it
that far on?
so Bernie, at least the last time that I checked, obviously, Medicare for all is quite literally a socialist plan. That is a socialist way of doing healthcare. But as far as, food decommodification, I don't think I've heard him say anything about that.
Well,
Housing decommodification, I don't think I've heard him say anything about that. He's could have.
sure. No, no,
I
no.
don't want to, take anything away
No,
from him,
that's
but
that's that's fair. I mean, I guess I'm not entirely sure enough about Bernie Sanders propositions, but isn't like food stamps for anyone who can't afford it, isn't that essentially food decommodification? And isn't like housing as a human right, like essentially like YIMBYism, which is the idea of like, essentially prioritizing like cheap of affordable apartments and then making sure that
yeah.
people can afford it? Isn't that like another way to decommodify housing?
Well, decommodify also doesn't mean just give people enough money so that they can afford whatever the capitalists say they can afford. Because,
But
decommodification doesn't just happen at point of sale. It also happens the process that things are actually made. Its effects on the environment when we actually make a economic system that cares about profit instead of actually just having enough to feed people and whatnot.
Sure, but like when you said that, like it's not just whatever the capitalists agree to do it. Bernie Sanders was also in favor of rent control, like of essentially
Hmm.
saying capitalists don't get to control whatever we get to say.
Hmm.
He says no. The government will step in and say you can only charge these people this amount of money because this is how much
Right.
minimum wage is in your area. You can't ask people to pay more than the minimum wage in a given area to ensure that like people have housing as a human right.
Right.
And like
Well, like literally the only difference in what we're talking about is
mhm.
that in my situation, people like landlords and Walmart wouldn't exist. And by Walmart
See,
doesn't exist, I mean there won't be like a superstore in your area. I just mean there won't be some huge company that owns it. It
right,
would
but
be the
that's
actual
uh,
workers or the community itself that owns
but
it.
I would agree with that. It like antitrust laws would completely break up Walmart. Like we should decentralize how much.
Oh, yeah.
But like I guess I just don't. Maybe I'm we're talking past each other in terms of definitions,
Mhm.
but I don't see a
Yeah.
huge difference between liberalism and what a lot of people would like your version of socialism or my
Right.
version
Well,
of liberalism. And maybe you would say like
right.
when you envision a liberal, you envision Hillary Clinton, and you're very different from that. And when I envision a
Mm.
socialist, I think of like uh,
Fidel Castro.
yeah, sure. Or like Putin or
Yeah.
something like that. Or like
Yeah.
Xi
Yeah.
Jinping. And it's like, I'm nowhere
Yeah.
near those people either. And I
Oh,
don't
okay.
think you
Yeah.
are.
So let's just piss the tankies off right now.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Fuck China.
USSR,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. USSR, not socialist.
Yeah.
China, not like none of these socialist,
Absolutely.
communists, whatever you want to say. Vietnam,
Hmm.
not communist.
Hmm.
I can just keep going.
No, I
I
fully
can
agree.
like just
I
literally
fully agree.
all these states just not no because none of these states did the two most fundamental things that you need to do to be a communist nation, which is abolishment of the state
Hmm.
and decommodification.
How do you,
Neither of them does any of those
I
things.
just
So,
have I have a question. How
uh,
as a state would you abolish a state?
yeah. So, when a lot of anarchists say abolish the state,
You have to do that
we use
globally,
such
right?
old, we use such old, stupid language. I
Sure.
hate our language so much. It's
Yeah.
so disconnected from.
Yeah. Well, tell
So
me
we
what
don't.
that means. Tell me on that.
Yeah, at least I, as an anarcho-socialist, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have governments. I'm just saying that we should have a completely different type of government. But yes, abolishment of the state would mean it would be a global project. Anarchism is more so a project than it is an actual, political thing that you can just write an amendment and do. It's more so the getting rid of things like, um, let's say, it's more so just an anti-imperialist, state coercion type of dealio. So basically, an abolishment of America, wielding its military might over, Syria and whatnot,
Sure, but I
basically.
like yeah, I would be against that too, right? And like I
Yeah.
but I like the way that I see it is that a socialist country would be
Hmm.
where capital owners don't exist. That the
Yeah.
workers own the means of production. And that's
Hmm.
that right there. Like I'll just summarize it all into there because I think a lot of people pin a lot of other things into socialism, ones that I agree
Hmm.
with, and then I'm like, well, I'm not sure if I'm a socialist anymore because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we need to stop exploiting the global south. We need to,
Hmm.
decommodify medical good, like medicine, education, housing, all of those things. And I'm
Yeah.
all
You speak
aboard
my
those,
language.
and I just don't
Yeah.
understand why they get slipped under this socialism, which I disagree with. Does that make sense? And I feel
What
like,
I guess we can say this. What about socialism don't you like other than these two?
well, like
Or is it just those two?
other than which two?
Like
Yeah,
the
that's essentially.
non-voluntary co-ops and the what's wrong with liberalism?
Well, I guess what's wrong with liberalism at the end of the day? Because I feel like all of those criticisms that you gave, I would also critique and say I don't think that's unique or essential to how America could run. And I'll get back to because you said a couple things, and I
Mm.
kind of want to go over them real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah, no, we can abandon that conversation because we agree too much on that
Sure,
conversation. We'll be
sure,
talking in
sure.
circles in
Let's
the
get into
future
the nitty
together.
gritty. Let's get into
Go
where we
ahead. Yeah,
disagree.
go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead with
yeah.
your list. Go ahead with your list.
So I guess like so one, profit over people. I of course
Mhm.
I think that's a problem. What I think the biggest frustration that I have is this idea that like as you said, the one thing that I really took well, I took a little umbrage over. I don't want to,
Mhm.
Elon Musk can throw himself over the Capitol and just command what he does. I fully agree that rich people have more say or more votes, as you can say it, in this country as much as poor people do. But I think that influence is highly um, overestimated. I think that if you got, I mean, I have a couple studies that would like essentially. I did a TikTok video about this kind of recently that I do think that it's
Mhm.
overblown. That I do think that if you got 60-70% of the American people behind you, behind a specific
Mhm.
policy, if everyone woke up today and decided we need Medicare for all, except all of the business owners and all of the politicians, that shit would be done immediately. And that maybe
Well,
that's like
that's what you just well what you just said is the problem. Besides
sure,
all the politicians and besides all the business owners,
sure, but
because
I
Medicare for all has been 74% favorable in the U.S.
it
for how long?
it kind of isn't though, because if you ask people, hey, do you think that Medicare medicine should be available to everyone? Everyone will say yes, including my
Mhm.
conservative
Oh, of course.
partner's
Yeah.
dad. But if you
Mhm.
ask them, they're like, we already have that because a poor person can just go to the hospital and get free, huge in
Mhm.
quotes there. They'll get treated, right? Now, of course, they'll be
Yeah.
strapped with medical bills. Of course, they'll go into bankruptcy, but they got treated, right? So, like,
Right.
I think that they're not at when you ask people, do you want, it depends on how it's phrased. Do you want Medicare for all? Do you want Obamacare? You see the numbers plummet from 74% to like 10. And then if you ask
Yeah.
them
Well,
the ACA,
well,
then
there
it
was
jumps up to
I
like
know
30.
yeah, I know because Comedy Central did that bit, right? That was like back in
I
the
don't know
actual
what.
Obama years.
Uh-huh.
Well, because Comedy Central did like a bit, like you know how they like go around and like into the Trump people or whatnot. They go into like the Trump rallies and
Sure.
whatnot and just ask people questions. They're like, "How do you feel about Obamacare?" And they're like, hate it." And then they're like, "Well, how do you feel about
The
the
ACA,
Affordable
yeah.
Care Act?" And they're like, "Oh, that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that." It's just like
Absolutely. Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely. And
like okay.
I just say that like
Well,
I
people
think
don't know
this
what things are called because CRT is when they teach kids Marxism. So
Exactly. No, I fully agree with you. I fully agree. I just think that that 74% stack generally comes from asking, "Hey, do you think that everyone should get medicine?" And most people would say
mm,
yes, they already do. Let's not change the system. It's
right,
perfect. And that I
right,
feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect that people who are in favor of Bernie Sanders type of medicine or that like decommodifying of medicine where the
mm,
government takes control over, you see those numbers plummet from 74% to way lower than that. And I think that
mm,
we overestimate how interested people are in Medicare for all. And we need people next to us. And instead of I know this is kind of a hot take, and it's definitely where I differ a lot with Marxists. Is I think we need to stop pointing the fingers at Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos because I don't think they're stopping us from getting Medicare for all. I think it's kind of our fellow neighbor, and we need to talk and have a conversation with them and get more
yeah.
people on board.
Here's what I mean by that, right? Currently, right now, probably well, not right now because it's the afternoon, I guess, everywhere in the U.S. by now. Probably not in like California. They're still in working hours, but um. probably today there was probably some guy from some pharmaceutical company that makes the diabetes pill
Yeah,
that's doing why why insulin or why insulin should still be $250 a vial or whatever it is,
sure,
right? And our government listens to those people a lot. Know why? Because there's no regulation on it.
for sure.
When Marxists, and I'll just say this real quick because I think this will sum up a lot of it.
Yeah,
When socialists basically get on our well, why is neoliberalism bad? It's definitely just the motive, like what motivates actual policy.
mm-hmm.
Because as long as you have um private money you know, the in a in a typical capitalist company, you have what's the most important thing for that business to do, to make
It's
money.
profit for sure.
A pharmaceutical company's main goal is not to cure people. Their main goal is to make money, and we've seen
Sure.
that time and time and time again. And it's all about the actual motive behind it. Now, I, right, don't have enough money to lobby, to pay some lobbyists to go in and, you know, flood, you know, my state government and whatnot, and tell those people that they should make insulin, you know, either free or significantly cheaper, you know, than what it is or whatnot. Why? Because the government doesn't make insulin. You know who makes insulin? Private companies.
Sure.
Well, why is that so? Because we don't have a decommodification of the medical industry. So as long as we have all these, so as long as we quite literally have companies who privately, you know, make this drug, the government can't necessarily tell those people that they can't, you know, make money. Of course, we can put regulation on regulation on regulation on regulation and wait till the next Republican takes office and then takes away those regulations and take those regulations and take those regulations back. Or we can just, you know, cut out the middleman. The government makes medicine now, boo hoo. And why doesn't the government charge $1 million, you know, for insulin? Well, that's because they'll get voted out next election. Because people, because instead of us voting with our wallets, because it's quite literally the thing that they need, we just vote with the thing that we have, our vote. So as long as we vote to keep insulin either free or extremely cheap, then it shall be.
Sure. I would agree with so we're definitely getting into
Mm,
beliefs that I think we would disagree a little bit more on.
right.
What I would say is I don't think that this is unique to capitalism because America is
Mm,
the only country who didn't fix this problem. Every
right.
other country who we both agree are all capitalist. I would say every country
Hmm.
in the world is capitalist.
Hmm.
We are the
Yeah.
only first world or developed country that
Hmm.
hasn't been able to figure out free healthcare. And
Yeah. Well,
like
I say that capitalism is a spectrum, but yeah, we're just a
sure.
lot farther along. Well, sorry, a lot of countries are a lot farther along than we are.
Well, I would love to push away from wherever we are for sure.
Hmm.
And I guess so. Another thing that you were talking about is motivations, and maybe this comes from like a just like a philosophical like difference we might have.
Hmm.
I honestly like at the end of the day, I don't really care how people are motivated. Like a lot of people talk about Joe Biden and the fact that he didn't um, like sure he gave that $1 trillion spending bill to like fix or to alleviate COVID regulation or to
Hmm.
alleviate COVID, and also like yeah he disbanded a lot of that student loan debt, but did he really want to? And I'm like I don't care because it did happen. So like
Right.
I think
Yeah,
I don't
that's not what I'm talking about by motivation,
sure.
but yeah, I agree with you.
I want to tie it back into what you were saying,
Mm,
which is I don't really care if companies only care about the bottom dollar as long as they don't do bad things. And I think that if their motivation is, well, we can do this and this will make us a ton of money, but then we might go to jail and that's not worth it and they don't do it, I don't care.
yeah,
You know, I don't care that
yeah,
they're only motivated by their personal interest to not go to jail. That's what the government is for, is to recognize that when our motivations just get in the way, there's going to be a lot of externalities that we don't see where things just will fall apart.
right.
Like for example, you know, water being charged for like $100 in Katrina. The government steps in and say, "No, you can't do that." And now they're going to
You
be
just can't.
personally there.
Yeah,
We don't have to change anyone's motives. We just say, "Now there's an extra motivation. You don't want to go to jail. You don't want anyone to
right.
stop you from doing this, so you'll just follow the rules." And then
And
now we're all
and well
good.
and well, what the socialist says is we're cutting out the middleman.
But
So
why I feel like it's
instead
more
of
difficult though. I feel like it's more difficult to change everyone's motivations to be self-interested and towards everyone else, rather than just fix those externalities as you see, because I don't see any issues with fixing those externalities. I don't see any issues with just saying, oh hey, if you are motivated to try and steal from your neighbor, but you only don't do so because you don't want to get caught, that's okay.
Mhm.
That's like, I'm okay with that
Yeah.
society in my world where people are only prohibited from doing things because we enacted laws. Now, I would rather, of course, if like I were friends with these people, I would rather they don't get super motivated into stealing things, because that might mean that like
Well, I'll put it this way, right?
mhm,
How long has drug running been illegal in America?
drug running,
Hmm.
forever.
Yeah, yeah, for as long as America, but why do
Sure.
people still do it?
Because the motivations are like, there's a cost benefit analysis, right? That like the
Right.
the motivation that you have, that some motivations are stronger than others, and we just need to
Mhm.
enforce sometimes stronger motivations, or at least make those motivations a little bit more palatable for people. Um, like it depends on the I guess I hear what you're saying, that
Yeah.
sometimes people will just break the law anyway, and I hear that, but I think that there's a little bit of here's what I'll say. I'll take back what I was saying before. Here's what I'll say. I think that the cost benefit analysis that someone who's like grown up on the slums, who are like because we recognize that impoverished people are the people who gravitate most towards drug running, because that benefit is so high. That benefit is, I get to pay for my family's food and medicine and shelter and water. And that not being met, no motivation will stop that from occurring. And I think
Mhm.
that a CEO's motivation of just making more money is a little bit different from a person saying, my family will starve. I think that those people are way more desperate than the CEO. And I think
So
it's easier to curb. Sorry.
and I will say this about the CEO though,
Mm-hmm.
because I know a couple. They don't. These aren't necessarily. And I guess this is a another. I don't know if it's a misconception, but more so a thing that I think a lot of lefties don't get completely correct.
Huh?
Not every CEO in America that does bad things is an evil person.
Oh, for sure. I
They're
would
quite
fully agree.
they're quite literally reacting to whatever their motivations are.
Sure.
When you're a CEO, right? Let's say that you have 10,000 employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in the grand scheme of things, you're not like the largest company in the U.S., but you're a fairly large company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your motivations are because you have a quite literally fiduciary duty to your shareholders
Correct.
is to make the most amount of money possible.
Sure.
What happens when you need to make the most amount of money possible? Well, certain things like uh, OSHA regulations and and medium wage start to not necessarily matter as much.
I
Now we can now I'm going somewhere with it.
Okay,
I'm going
sure,
somewhere with it.
sure.
So we can put regulations on saying things that, well, those things need to happen and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And but what you're going to do is you're just going to go right up to the line as much as you can get away with. And this is not really necessarily conjecture. We see this happen every
Sure.
single
No,
day.
I fully agree with this. Yeah.
You push it right up to the line just so you can make as much money, and then you try to push it a little bit further until you can keep pushing it. Perfect example, Purdue Pharma, right? The people who made OxyContin, right?
Okay.
Now these people, now the this family was comically evil, but
Uh huh.
they had an incentive to make the most amount of money as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't live in the neighborhoods where the opiate crisis was going mad and whatnot. It wasn't their family members who were getting sick off of this stuff. They had a profit motive to make the most amount of money possible. Whether they were hurting their community, their employees, they didn't necessarily care. What I'm saying is we shouldn't have a system where we have to constantly and constantly and constantly put regulation and regulation and regulation, and then have them break the regulations and try to make better regulations, and then have them pay for a whole bunch of lobbyists to put a bunch of politicians in their back pocket so that they look the other way, and then the FDA is not doing what it needs to do because all of these people are all of these people are having their campaigns donated to and whatnot. Instead of doing all of that, I'm just cutting out the middleman. Have the workers that work there run it. No profit. The only profit motive that they actually have, well, in this case, we're talking about pharmaceuticals, so there is no profit motive. have the actual people who work there run it so that we don't constantly get into this back and forth of, will they, won't they break the regulation that we just put in place
So
yesterday and tomorrow.
so that's I I hear that. I guess my question is how. I'll use sort of an analogy, right? That like
Hmm.
let's look at just as an example, TV companies. Okay, just whatever Fox News. Okay, we'll go with some of the worst examples here. Okay, we got Fox News. Um,
Yeah.
you would obviously agree that there's a profit motive to drop misinformation to their consumers to
Hmm.
infuriate them, to buy products, to make sure that they tune in, to get them enraged, to get them hooked, right, to their product.
Hmm.
I guess my question is, if the workers own the means of production, if the workers are also in charge of democratically electing who gets in control, wouldn't they also have a profit motive to elect someone who gives them the most dollar back for their vote? Because their interest, like people are generally self-interested, where
Hmm.
a worker is like, I don't like this sort of like fetishization of workers a little bit sometimes, where it's like
Yeah.
we also need to recognize that if a worker steps in, he's like, how. I just gave him a he when I didn't need to. I gotta curb that
Yeah, you're fine.
sometimes. Yeah,
You're fine.
where they step in and like they want the most amount of money too, because that money means at the very least luxury goods. That
Yeah.
is it makes
So
their life more
I'll
enriched. And,
I'll break another myth then for you.
okay,
Well, co-ops don't fix every problem.
sure,
A
but
lot of
then
people like to pretend. A lot of
sure,
people like to pretend that workers owning the means of
yeah,
production will fix quite literally
sure,
everything. And I guess I haven't been explaining myself well. So I guess let me back up a little bit so that I
yeah,
can answer that analogy. Socialists see a fundamental issue with the relationship the coercive relationship that an owner has with its employee.
mm-hmm.
And I think that we can agree that that is a coercive relationship. I
Currently,
own,
yes,
I, yeah, currently, I own a company,
yeah,
right? I, as a business owner, more than likely have a lot more wealth than you do.
yes,
I set the terms of how much you're going to get paid and the conditions in which you're going to get paid.
yes,
You work for me, and whatever labor that you produce, even though you produce a lot more output than you receive in output, you
mm-hmm.
produce a lot more than what you get. I, being the person who basically has the power to set all of these rules, get to make that decision,
Mm-hmm.
right? For you, you don't necessarily have an option unless you go into business for yourself. But not everybody can just create a company. Also, if everybody created a company, who would work at them?
Yeah, for sure,
Anyway,
yeah,
moving on. We see a fundamental issue with that relationship. That relationship itself, what we see, regardless of a welfare system, which we obviously both agree with, that if you had a heavy workforce, welfare system, you'd be able to give a lot of more people a lot more power to be able to move jobs and whatnot. But the fundamental relationship that it has, that an owner has with their employee, is what we can see one as coercive, right? As if, well, not as coercive, but coercive in the same line that lords had over their serfs and slaves, that masters had over their slaves, right? I own this thing, you work for me, end of story. That relationship is one that we see, that is one that just it cannot work. Now
Shh.
let's flip over to, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, you're good. So I hear this a lot, and I agree with some of it because
Yeah.
I guess what I would say is, do you have any issue with, let's say we um, let's say we just do two things. We
Hmm.
increase welfare hugely so that you do not have to die if you don't take that job. And two,
Hmm.
union representation is through the roof. So that you know that you can negotiate wages higher.
Yeah.
Is there anything wrong that you see with that system?
I want to take away the negotiation part.
But why? I think that the negotiation, as long as the powers are semi equal, or at least like
Hmm.
they're currently like this, we both agree.
Hmm.
But I'm saying I think we can get it pretty close to here, and then I don't see any issue.
Well, that's the thing. I don't want just a here. I just want a here.
I feel
So,
like you did the same. Yeah.
basically say is instead of just trying to make this relationship work as best as it can, I'm just getting rid of the relationship
But
altogether.
I don't get
So
why. Like we already have structures that
owners,
work.
workers are owners and owners are workers.
But
You
what,
know,
like
just make those people the exact same people
but what I don't see the issue with owners and workers working together as long as there's not coercion.
because we don't necessarily need them.
I think that there is a little bit sorry. I think that owners, so one, owners provide capital in order to begin a business, which I think, and
Mm-hmm.
like investment structures, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think putting that like this is another thing that I was looking into because I used to consider myself a socialist. I was super interested in co-ops, and then I started like
Yeah.
really diving into it. And if the owners don't, if the if owners and workers are the same, then the workers now have to invest and the workers now have to build the building from the ground up. And that
Mm-hmm.
super disincentivizes poor people because poor people don't have the resources to invest into a business. They need
Right.
immediate.
Well, I guess then that's when we get a little bit more into the weeds of instead of well, what is co-op and more so how is co-op
Uh
because we don't necessarily have to organize it that way. And this is where more of that, heavy government interaction into the economy happens
huh.
because it is a lot, it's very easy, and especially, and this is more so kind of a thing that's being, debated about and talked about more so in market socialism, which is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about market
Yeah,
socialism
for
right
sure.
now. And that just because you invest in something doesn't mean that you have to necessarily own a thing
But then why would
let
anyone invest?
to make money off of it.
Well, isn't that the same thing as owning it? Like if you
Con-
invest.
contr- controlling stocks and investing stocks aren't necessarily the same thing.
Sure, but if you invest into stocks, then that necessarily means that you have a voice in that company.
Why?
Well, at
Well,
least the current system. The
under the
current
current
system.
system, yeah, under the current system, yes, I'm basically talking about
Okay.
a system where you just you invest in a company because you know that the company is going to succeed. Basically, how like the relationship that a lot of VCs have with the tech industry. You find a VC that venture capitalist that is going to invest in their thing. They invest in your thing because they're going to make a whole bunch of money off of it, or they make some money off of it. Now, instead of that person just owning your company, you or in the group of people that you get along that gather together, um own it, and then that person, their investment just rises and they make
Right.
money off of
The
that.
problem with this system, though, is you're essentially taking out a loan from a business owner and succeeding with it, and then they get paid off back once it
Mhm.
succeeds. But what
Mhm.
happens if it fails?
What happens when current businesses fail?
Well, then the business owner, the person who invested, gets bankrupt, and I think that that's good because they get so much. There's a cost benefit analysis that they have to
So
do.
in Italy
Oh, I
currently,
know.
just
Is it the Marcona law? Is that what you're referring to, or is that is
yeah. It's not. I'm not referring to Mondragon specifically, but in Italy, they actually 40% of their businesses are worker co-ops.
yeah.
And what the government actually does is, if you have 10 people, the government will stake your initial investment, and that's just what they do. And that's kind of a system where what I'm talking about. I guess that took too long to actually get there,
For
but
sure.
that's what I'm talking about, in which the government would actually stake you if you don't necessarily have anybody else, the startup capital to do it yourself. It's basically an interest-free loan that you get from the government itself.
Sure.
So
I would.
the government gives you a loan for, let's say you need 10 grand to start your business. You and your folks, you're all liable for that 10 grand.
Mhm.
So you guys are the owners. You're liable for that 10 grand. So people wouldn't just start making businesses just to get, a free 10 grand. You are liable for that 10 grand. You own that 10 grand back. But um,
Do
but
you
yeah,
do you see how that would disadvantage poor people the most though?
how?
Because they don't have 10 grand on the line. They if they go
Sure,
10 grand
I'm not
under,
saying
they
everybody
are
needs
way
to.
more
I'm not saying
screwed.
everybody needs to. I'm not saying everybody needs to start a business. No, 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 no.
Sure. I hear what you're saying. That like it's okay if the original owners aren't lower class. It could be middle class, and then
Yeah.
they'll join later once the business has gone off,
Yeah.
got like been
Also,
built.
not every co-op needs to be buy-in. I think actually most co-ops won't even be buy-in. They just be you're a part of you get hired to the business and you work for the business now.
Isn't that just how is that different from like union representation where you just have a vote in some aspects of how the
It would be union representation where the union owns the business, basically.
okay. Okay. I guess I could see all of this, and I'm not opposed
Yeah,
to.
I'm basically just saying that. And so now here's what I'm not talking about because
Uh
a
huh.
lot of lefties do like to get this completely misconstrued.
Hmm.
Elon Musk has two jobs. Let's say I'm pretty sure he has more than that, but let's say he has two jobs,
Okay.
right? He has CEO as in he makes business decisions that have to do with Tesla and all its subsidiaries continuing to be companies,
Hmm.
and he has CEO just he owns a bunch of stock
Sure.
in Tesla.
Sure.
That the first job is an important job. I'm not saying that that every
Gotcha.
company needs to have every
Okay.
single employee making decisions on absolutely everything. I'm just saying that that decision now gets to be democratic. We have a democratic political system. We should have a democratic economic system.
Hmm.
So, and when you go to work, let's say that I own the juice factory.
Okay.
You now get to, and let's say that I have 100 employees, right?
Hmm.
I'm not saying that all of those 100 employees make every decision that happens for the juice company,
Hmm.
right? Let's say that those 100 people group gather themselves up to pools of 10, and then they vote in 10 managers, right? So now this company, and the numbers are going to be weird. Follow me anyway. So you have a group of managers, and then those managers will probably elect some type of board, and then that board elects me to be the king czar or whatnot
Okay.
of the juice company, right?
Uh huh.
Now I have a job there. I have a responsibility. I don't own the juice company, right? I'm probably a founder of the juice company,
Hmm.
and I can probably put in the constitution of the business that they can't just fire me. But um,
Okay.
because like our country has a constitution of things that we just can't vote out. Like we can't vote in murder is okay tomorrow because
Sure.
that
Sure.
goes against the constitution.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
But and I basically make all the executive decisions, blah blah blah, everything that like an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos when he was the CEO of Amazon, all of those things that they do, how that relationship works. The big difference is it's democratic
Sure.
instead of
Sure.
being like the oligarchical system that
For
we have
sure.
now.
For sure. I have a question for you.
What's
If
up?
if we like let's I'm curious about like where exactly your this is a weird way to put it, but your morals lie exactly when it comes to this sort of system. Because I guess my question is like, what happens at the end of the day if workers are more happy in just union representation rather than having a stake in the company? Because like let's just what happens if we look at them side by side and we recognize that the capitalist structure, that like the liberal structure, just expands more and it is able to be more efficient in running the than the one that the union
Socialism?
does. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not saying it does. I'm just curious. What if you saw that? Would you still advocate for socialists on a moral principle, or would you say, well, workers are succeeding more in this area and they seem to be happy, they seem to be okay with this representation? Are you like I'm just curious where you would land on
I
that?
I'll I guess I'll put it. I'll have two answers for that.
Mm-hmm.
So morally, yes, I'm still in favor of socialism.
Okay.
Practically, I don't see how anybody would. If I walked up to you and said, "I want to give you more democratic power at your job," yes or no? I don't see a lot of people saying no. Because the only thing that would change for the average day worker or any worker would be you just get more say in your job now.
I think that I would kind of disagree with this because
What changes?
your paycheck essentially, you would be more, it would be more speculative. the amount of it would your paycheck would instead be invested into stocks, which are more what's the term, like essentially like
Not
volatile.
well, not every not every co-op needs to work that way.
Sure, you said there wasn't
Not
a
every
buy-in.
co-op
You're right.
not every co-op currently even works that way. There's a lot of different. So I know of actually on TikTok there's this one um company, and what she does is and she's kind of like she's the owner of it, but basically just means that she's the head manager of it or whatnot, where they're all guaranteed a certain amount of money, right? Because the store is, I forgot what even it's a store, they sell stuff anyway. Moving on, they all make a certain amount of money, and whatever is left after taking care of obviously the needs of the company, saving and doing all of the businessy stuff. Not every dollar that comes in goes directly into the pocket. That's not how this works, as the company would fail. But after all the business stuff is taken care of, and after just baseline payroll, what everybody makes, let's say they all make $20 an hour. After everybody gets their $20 an hour, in a capitalist framework, there's a whole bunch left over, and that usually just either goes back into the company or that goes into the owner, right?
Sure.
Just and just and but now instead of what happens to it is that portion of money, instead of just going directly to the owner, they democratically choose what happens with that
Sure,
leftover.
but
So whether
can't
it
this
goes back into the business, whether it goes into their pockets.
can't the same thing happen with union representation, where they get to look at the numbers because it's public record and they can say, hey,
Mhm.
you have the ability to pay me more. We are negotiating for higher wages right now, and we are going to leave right now unless you pay more. And they don't, and then you leave and the business goes under, and they know that's going to happen,
Yeah,
so they increase the wages. And like,
yeah.
I guess I just like,
In my system, the workers just have final say, and instead of having to negotiate with the
you're just taking
owners,
out the
they
middleman.
are the owners. Yeah, they are the owners, so they just do it.
Sure. I guess, sure. I get what you're saying.
So instead of there needs to be this, gun to each person's head, oh, we'll walk or your business will fail. Like, instead of having to do that like whole thing, it just happens.
Here's what I'll definitely say about this is I get frustrated. To me I could see your argument. I could probably get on board with it. I guess at the end of the day, and this might sound a little flippant, I don't care about that right now when people are starving.
Mhm.
And
No,
like,
okay, and I'm so glad that this conversation went this way, because I think that this is like a great way to like pivot and then close eventually. I'm not like trying to abandon you.
no,
I'm
yeah,
just
no worries.
just
Yeah.
just pushing it to that level.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this needs to happen tomorrow, nor am I saying that this can happen tomorrow.
Mhm.
Socialism is a project.
Sure.
It's definitely not one that you do the night before, even though your teacher told you that you're going to need some time to do it.
Sure. Sure.
What needs to happen now, what
Mhm.
needs like as in a January 25th, is that we need to address climate change,
Mhm.
address homelessness,
Mhm.
address the medical care system, address homelessness, if that's not something that I already said. Like, there's like this laundry list of things, and I will work with you to the day that we both die to get those aims
Hell
done.
yeah.
Now, while we're doing that,
Uh-huh.
we can start looking at some alternative, types of economics, so that these things won't happen again.
Sure.
Because while we're fixing the house, they need to be like, well, why did the house collapse in the first place? And I'm arguing that the reason that the house collapsed in the first place is because the driving force behind a lot of how we produce things, why we produce things, and who gets the benefits of the things that we produce is decided by capital owners, and it should not be done that way. It
Sure.
should be democratically picked by the people of this country. I like democracy. It's my deal. I really love
Absolutely.
democracy.
Yeah.
So if we're going to have democracy politically, we need to have democracy economically.
Sure.
So I need to have a say in what my job is. If my job wants to, let's say I work for Lockheed and Martin, I want to have some picking to say whether we blow up the next Middle Eastern country or not. I'm gonna vote no, but
Sure.
we need to basically get the this capital class owner people who just quite literally just have, and I'm trying to voice as much as possible that I'd say the same thing whether these people are angels or demons. I'm not taking into consideration like the actual morals of these capitalists, whether they be benevolent or whether they be malevolent. It doesn't really change the math for me. They still, at the end of the day, have the incentive to make the most amount of money as possible because that's just how the capitalist machine go burr.
Sure.
But yeah, but to get back to it, we definitely have a lot of big fish to fry, and
Yeah.
I would wish with all my heart that lefties would really, really, really stop being so damn antagonistic to to people like yourself
Damn.
when we're trying to talk about these things
I need
because
to.
we we could solve so many problems if we just went, hey guys, I understand that we don't agree on everything right now,
Yeah.
but we can agree on fixing the material conditions of the American people so that people can focus on things like getting a better education and improving their lives or whatnot. Republicans talk about family so much, and you can clip this one. Matter of fact, let's get the TikTok clips ready.
Okay.
This is for conservatives.
Uh huh.
You talk about caring about family values so much. No, I care about family values. You know how a parent can actually focus on the well being of their kids if they don't have to work three jobs?
This is so
That's when
based.
they can do that. If you want to start talking about conservatives, if you want to start talking about, getting the kids in line and having people pick up their lives, it's a lot easier to go back to school if I don't have tens of thousands of dollars and sometimes in some cases $100,000 worth of school debt that I have to take care of first. I can start thinking about, going back to school and investing myself and getting a better job if I don't actually have to think about all the crippling debt that I will be in afterwards. It's really easy to take care of my grandparents if I know that I won't be responsible with thousands of dollars of medical debt because they can't get the basic medication that they need because people in your party don't want to make Medicare accessible for all people and want to keep a pharmaceutical industry that cares about their next yacht or over whether grandma lives or dies. Okay, so that's for you guys,
That was
and
fantastic.
I'll work with any Democrat or any liberal to the day that I die to make sure that those things happen.
Awesome. Hey, I really appreciate that. I need to get like I need to get someone who actually disagrees with me next time because like, damn, I feel like we're like
We've
line.
just been Yeah, no, no,
I
no,
got.
no. Tag me. No, next time if you ever come up with like go against like a neocon or God forbid
Oh,
a
I
right wing
want.
libertarian,
Honestly,
just
I
tag me in,
dude,
coach. I got you.
I sometimes get frustrated because I feel like all of the antagonism that I incur on like the platforms that I use are just with leftists, and sometimes it frustrates me because I need to remember I am 99% in agreement with you, and I need to find some
Hmm.
conservatives and neocons to be like, okay, I know exactly what I believe. Like you guys are crazy, you guys
Yeah,
are insane.
yeah, yeah,
Not well, I don't want
yeah.
to demonize anyone, but you guys are
Well,
insane.
and I guess I'll push this in for to sympathize with the conservatives or whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, and going even back to like in my nobody in my family is really well, I take that back. They're like democratic conservative, like how like so like
Like Joe
like
Manchin
that
kind.
yeah, 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 yeah. But like I say this all the time that it definitely goes for because I don't report this a lot because it's not something that I'm ashamed of at all. But I don't like to lead with this because it gets me out of a lot of lefty circles. But I am a Christian person.
Hmm.
I'm a Christian person who also believes that trans women are women and that gay people are valid. So yeah. Anyway, so I just had to get that one straight.
Yeah.
But if Republicans weren't racist, then every black Christian would be a Republican. Let me tell you this, all right? Because there are so many black Christians and black conservatives in the Democratic Party because Republicans can't get over their race
This
issues.
is
But
This is
but
absolutely true. Like, especially when you look at how conservative like minority groups are, especially
oh
Hispanic people
yeah.
as like a total,
Oh
like
yeah.
how
Oh
Catholic.
yeah. I'm from Florida. I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I grew up in LA. Like I knew
Yeah.
so many Mexican Americans and so many of them were like deeply entrenched Catholics who were
Yeah.
just like I if you guys just let me eat, like we would be on favor in all of our social issues, but I
Right.
got to vote
Right.
Democrat because you guys are like you guys call us
Yeah.
not names that I
The
want to
worst.
say right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But my point with that is that a lot of people in this country don't really get to participate in, or don't at least know how to participate in politics in a way that actually suits them because they're so busy doing everything else.
Hmm.
Like, it's really easy to be conservative when the only thoughts that you have in your head are pay mortgage and looking at the immigrants that are moving into your neighborhood and
Absolutely.
saying, ah, yes, those people are the reason that I'm poor. When you just literally have no other reason because in your head, big boss man capitalist that's above you, they're like almost deific. Like, oh, they're company owners. They deserve to rip me off.
Sure.
I'm just a lonely peasant, worker. I don't deserve anything better. I don't
Hmm.
actually deserve rights. I don't deserve, to not have to work two full-time jobs just to put the scraps on the table for my kids to eat. So I'm just trying to give people better answers to their questions.
Yeah.
I think that big parts of our racism issue, especially across minority groups, disappear when people just have more access to money because you stop having to worry about those things. Kind of, it's kind of
Absolutely.
like it's kind of like a coastal elite thing. There's kind of a reason that like there's kind of a correlation with like the more money you make or like that like the better your socioeconomic outcome, you start to get a little bit more liberal because you stop having to focus on things like putting food on the table and trying to fight against the person that's next to you, and
Absolutely.
then you just invest more in education and invest more in thinking outside of your box or whatnot. Of course there are plenty of rich people who are like conservative and racist and transphobic and homophobic and all these other type of things.
Sure.
So there's definitely a correlation there. And I'm just trying to give people better answers to the questions like, well, why don't I make a lot of money, and why don't I? And I think that's what like a lot of conservatives get wrapped up in because conservatives quite literally have no other answers
Yeah.
than that because all they're fed is,
Well,
well,
they
it's
they do have an
go
answer.
ahead.
That answer is government intervention. They're taking away your taxes. Let's just strip down all of your Medicare and all your Social Security benefits, and then you'll be more rich because you're getting it back in taxes. Like
I
that
don't
kind of
I
like.
don't but, but what kills me about what bothers me about conservatives though is that they also push for like heavy like military
Sure,
spending.
it's the
Like
constant
how much?
confusion.
Like how much did Trump increase the military
Was it
budget?
two
Like where
billion
do they?
dollars? I want
Like
to find
where
it. This number.
it's already? I think it's already at like well over like $750 billion a year that we put into like the military.
Yeah.
Like if you scoop up like 10% of that, you could solve like all of America's infrastructure problems. Like immediately. Like immediately.
Yeah, they gave it a 3.1% pay increase to all troops.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good.
Well,
Troops,
yeah, sure,
troops.
sure. No,
Yeah,
I hear you. I hear you. That's fair.
yeah. Even
Uh,
even as a lefty, people get that. I don't have any problems with troops as long as they're not, like killing people. My
sure.
problem isn't with troops. My problem is people sending them over there.
That's
I
very.
am I am more pro troop and more pro veteran than any Republican because I don't want them to go over there in the first place.
Honestly,
I want to keep them home.
I respect that. I respect that a lot. I respect that a lot. I think there's a lot of demonization sometimes of like individuals over like institutions, and I think it's
Mhm.
sometimes super frustrating when like, and I don't even think it's there's a lot to
Blame
blame,
the
but I
policy, not the people.
yeah, and I think that there's kind of an issue sometimes with the rhetoric. This might I don't know how much they're
Yeah,
gonna.
go for it. Go
All
for it.
cops are
Go for
all
it.
cops are bastards is a terrible slogan in my opinion.
Okay.
I think.
Listen, listen, listen. All right. Don't get me started on lefties in our slogans. All right.
Dude,
They're all terrible.
it's
Okay. So the
bad.
thing is that know what you can put on a T-shirt. Know
Mm.
what you can put on a T-shirt. Demonetize the police, or what is it like? Defund the
Defund the
police. You
yeah.
can, yeah, you can scream that. Well, that's not the actual policy
Yeah,
that
because
we're rooting for. The policy that we're rooting for is de-invest from the militarization of the police so that we can invest into
oh,
the
it's
socioeconomic systems
absolutely.
of the actual people that are around us, so that we can create a system where people aren't committing violence, but they're actually, we're just responding to their socioeconomic conditions and blah 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 blah. You
Yeah.
can't put that on a T-shirt,
One of the
and
best
that's the thing that the conservatives have over us because all of their slogans, while extremely wrong, are short because they're stupid.
One
But
thousand
anyway,
percent. I one of the best things. My brother once told me about this. My brother and I are very similar in like our political ideology, and he said He said, liberals suck at slogans, but also conservatives suck at reading past the slogan. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
that like sort of like discrepancy. Because honestly, the one of the best political slogans that I can think of is pro-life. Like, it's like, this is what
yeah,
we stand for, this is what we care for, and like try
yeah,
going against this. And it's like you
yeah.
have to like wriggle
But then,
through so many.
but then you look under the hood of
Oh,
pro-life.
1,000, of course.
After they're born, they can burn in hell.
Yeah, absolutely. Of
Like
course.
after a baby's welfare,
Yeah.
we have to feed it now. No, 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 no,
Yeah, I
no, no,
love
no.
the answer to what happens if a poor mother suddenly gets like has a baby. Shouldn't that baby get cared for? And they're like, "No, the baby needs to live and then starve.
Yeah, like yeah. Make sure that the
They'll
baby
die.
gets here
They
to
need to die
start.
outside of the womb, okay?"
Right. It's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing. But they get to like throw around like this. It's pretty convincing. Oh, I'm pro-life or whatnot,
Mhm.
and then they demonize like people for being humanists. So when like a person's like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I'm a humanist, like I really just care about people. I want people to be taken care of or whatnot. Then
Mhm.
they're like, ugh, these humanists, these bleeding hearts or whatnot, and
Yeah.
then they'll go on like a 2 hour tirade about why a zygote that just got conceived 36 seconds ago needs to be given the exact same moral weight as a 9 month fetus or whatever,
Sure. Yeah.
baby or whatever term you want to use,
Mhm.
abortion
Absolutely.
organism. But I mean, I will say this just so that you know,
Mhm.
because I said that I was a Christian before,
Yeah.
and I think that this actually what I'm about to say is probably an answer to a lot of the lefty, like more like leftist and also just like liberal divide. Um, I don't like abortion, right? I'm not a
Uh-huh.
very I don't like abortions. I think that we should give everybody a fair shake. But one, I can see why a woman would want an abortion.
Mhm.
Um, I can't say that I don't like abortions and then just shut up, knowing that there are 1,001 reasons why a person would want access to an abortion.
Mhm.
It's not my body.
Mhm.
Um, the where I consider a life starting is a religious and personal philosophical debate that I have to have with myself all the time, and
Mhm.
that's why I think that life starts where it starts. I can't necessarily place that on another person,
Sure.
and I can run down the list,
Sure.
but
I
I'll say
actually
this:
really
just because I don't like something doesn't mean that it should be illegal.
absolutely
You know,
because I was about to say like I to me actually like my moral philosophy is kind of pro life. I don't if I had a partner who is willing to hear my position out, who is willing to like have a baby, I wouldn't feel comfortable with an abortion. But the thing is, what a privileged take I get to have where I have
right,
money
right,
and I don't have a womb, okay? Like so
right,
this like
right, right.
this like I one recognize that abortions don't necessarily decrease when you make them legal. Abortions
No,
decrease with sex
but we
education,
have numbers on that.
contraceptives.
We have
Absolutely,
numbers on that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
contraceptives, and the only thing that increases is women dying due to very
Yeah,
unsafe abortions.
aren't teen pregnancies the highest in red states where they don't have comprehensive
Yeah,
sex ed?
one thousand
I
percent.
remember that being a thing.
Yeah, one
Yeah,
thousand
because they
percent.
don't. Well, if you don't tell teenagers what
Sure.
happens, or at least give them better resources, but this all goes back into this. See, we're going full circle because this
Mm-hmm.
goes into material conditions
Mm-hmm.
because that's where conservatives don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough just to say, well, you don't get to have this thing. I'm just going to tell you no,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not going to just tell you, oh, don't screw over your workers and don't pollute the earth and whatnot, even though you have a huge incentive to do so. I'm going to give you a better alternative, which is sex ed, condoms, Plan B, or other types of forms of birth control or whatever, or a better economic philosophy system in which the coercive element of economics and the profit motive is decreased so much so that I don't necessarily have to worry about the moral weight of a person. I'm giving them a better system to work within. so we can get better outcomes as we have better systems. I'm a big systems guy.
No, I
I
like
care
it.
about the systems that we have a lot.
Yeah.
I believe that if the systems that we have are better, we'll get better output afterwards. And I know that that was a really messy way of me tying in anti-capitalism in the abortion argument, but hey, I did it anyway.
I need to have like some sort of structure because I feel like we're flying through, and I love it
Oh
by
yeah,
the way. I think
yeah,
this is
yeah, yeah. No,
fantastic. Um,
we're zooming, we're
yeah,
zooming.
absolutely. I feel like I appreciate these conversations so much because I think it makes me recognize that like at the end of the day, I don't really care about the labels liberal or socialism. And I think that I don't
Mm.
want to put too much stock into it because pretty much 95% of people in my life would put the label socialist on me anyway. I would say those people just don't know what socialism is, but you know,
Nobody knows socialism, man.
true. Yeah,
Nobody knows socialism,
including other
including
socialists.
socialists,
Yeah,
including
like
socialists. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I said everybody. I didn't exclude
absolutely.
my people. I
Absolutely.
just said everybody. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, if you want to find, there was another thing that you were saying a little while ago that I kind of disagreed with. And we've run through so many things that
What's
we
up?
agree with. I was just curious. I was just
Yeah,
curious
what's
what.
up? What's up?
Yeah. So you were saying forever ago. I just wrote this down.
Yeah,
That regulations will be cut back because things will like essentially we can't trust on regulations because eventually they'll just be cut back. And I guess
hmm
my what I would say to that is um, that's what a democracy is. Is if people
right,
disagree, at the end of the day, sometimes systems will change. And I think the same thing would occur with socialism, where if some people are just saying
right,
this system isn't working, then they'll just cut it back eventually. And
right.
if we look at like regulations that never get cut back, you look at they're always the most popular because it's political
hmm
suicide to go against Medicare. It's political suicide to go against Social Security. If you cut those back ever, people will riot. And it's like
So
not great. Yeah.
here's what I meant by that.
Okay.
We have an EPA,
Okay.
right? We have an FDA,
Yeah.
and we have a Department of Labor,
Sure.
right? Now, in our current system, for companies, it makes them a lot of money to ignore those three industries, right? The EPA, the
Sure.
FDA, and the Department of Labor.
Well, sometimes because I kind of disagree with that because if you don't follow those and you get caught, there's
Well,
there's fines.
the it getting caught is, the it getting caught is that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that they have an incentive to buck those systems, just like and I think
Oh,
this is what I
sure.
was saying before,
Sure, sure.
like a drug runner has an incentive to sell drugs even though it's illegal, right?
Sure. Sure.
So here's what I mean, and then this is more so what I meant by regulations being pushed back.
Hmm.
Um, exactly what I was saying with like the Purdue Pharma situation. And also quick limited series. Have you seen Dope Sick on
I
Hulu?
haven't. I've been wanting to get into it. That's the opioid.
If Yeah, if you want to get red pilled on socialism, definitely watch Dope Sick. Let me
I'm
tell you.
already. I feel like I'm already red pilled
Listen,
on like.
listen,
On,
but here's what I'm
I'm
going with
black
this.
pilled, baby.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. So in the show it's dramatized, but it's actually based on real events. Like it's like documentary style, but also like it has like Michael Keaton in
Sure.
it. But what happens is that these companies basically, because they're trying to make a whole bunch of money, are basically finagling their way around the FDA,
Hmm.
right? Because their incentive is so high to do this because the pharmaceutical industry is commodified, right? It's a commodity to it.
Sure.
It's something that they can sell, so they're going to try to sell it to the
Sure.
greatest ability.
Yeah.
Um, so they quite literally, through downright bribes or just the lobbying system that we have in the U.S., um, get around basically all the regulations that the FDA has, and even if the ones that they do get fined, FDA fines them for 2 mil, they make 1 billion, they don't really care. Because you
Sure.
can
Sure.
and I know that we can argue that to increase those fines, as in you get caught doing this, you get caught doing this thing, your company either doesn't exist anymore or you go to jail. Sure, we can do this. I'm talking about cutting the situation off beforehand. Exxon and Mobil. We already know the relationship that Exxon and Mobil has with the EPA.
Yeah.
Whether the EPA is even funded enough to actually go after them, whether they're just basically after people leave the EPA, they get these exact same people on their boards, or vice versa, to basically just look the other way and whatnot. We all know what these large companies do with interactions with the government. What I'm basically saying is just having laws on the books is not good enough, because either they get pushed back, which we see every time a Republican gets in place, especially things that aren't as popular, like the environment, like the FDA. A lot of people, nobody, no voter gets out of bed because we're pushing back EPA and
but
FDA regulation.
but that's I think that's kind of my point is I would fully agree that it's a moderate take. And if you ask a lot of Republicans, they're like, dude, the EPA, the FDA, that's corrupt. That's getting away in the way of the free market. Let's elect a representative to cut back on that, who listens
Mm.
to the free market and cuts back and restricts their hold over the FDA. Of course, I'm shaking my head at these people for sure, but I think I just like I feel like we don't have the we sometimes forget that at the end of the day we need to change people's minds, our next door neighbors, because if we don't get all of our neighbors on board, like we don't stand a chance to do anything.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and
I'm talking about down the line. I'm not talking about tomorrow. Tomorrow, what we need to do is we just need to start locking people up, because we're not going to have socialism tomorrow.
Sure.
Like, no, like
No, no,
seriously,
no,
like
absolutely.
we're not gonna have socialism tomorrow. So your plan of heavy fines or jail
Hmm.
in the short term, sure.
Sure.
I'm more so concerned about, well, how can we get to a situation where we no longer have this back and
No,
forth?
but what I'm saying, but I wouldn't even say, yeah, I would say regulation, but I would also say incentivize the politicians with our voices that we currently have. Let's call up our
Mm,
politicians and say, hey, I'm fucking sick of all of these uh, you know all of these huge corporations just
mm-hmm,
skirting all of these regulations because I'm getting hurt right now. I'm getting hurt by
mm,
all of these regulations that they're skirting, and I feel like that voice just never gets uttered, so then no one cares. And I feel like the most
yeah,
important part of having a democracy is making sure that your voice that we speak to people who disagree with us, change their minds,
yeah,
including conservatives. And I don't, to me, the number one issue that should be on every leftist mind is how do I convert a conservative? How
yeah,
do I get more people on my side so that we can fight for things that we care about? And I think a lot of people
mm,
just sort of dismiss that under they're bigots, they're the enemy, we're not listening, we're
mm,
building our coalition together. And it's like we need
mm.
a stronger and more durable and more flexible and more like just bigger
Well,
coalition.
I will say this, and this probably sounds bad.
Uh huh.
I've kind of given up on conservatives at
I
this point.
sure, sure.
And
I hear that, but I can't
and and
because
and here's what I'm saying. I haven't given and oh, I should rephrase.
sure.
I haven't given up on conservatives. I've given up on conservatism. And here's what I mean by that.
Okay.
If you're a true believer, I can't do anything for you. And like, if you're just fully like over there, like you're QAnoning and you're trumping or whatnot, I can't help you. Now, moderates, I can deal with a moderate.
I
Basically, what I'm saying, I need people who understand reality.
sure,
Because if
but
you don't understand reality, then I we
here
can't have a
here's my hot take. Here's my hot take. The best way to I think that those people are absolutely convertible, not to my position, but instead of
conversation.
you going, it's not us versus the child pedophiles, it's us versus the companies. Let's storm the Bastille. Like let's fucking
Yeah.
rip some
Hey,
bodies, and those people who
hey.
are like insane will turn into the insane left as well. And I feel like if
Yeah.
you
But
get those
I'm afraid that those people will just say, yes, these Jews that run all
sure,
these
sure.
companies. That's what they do. No, because the thing is that, sure, like, Nazis also hate companies, right? They
Sure,
do.
sure,
They hate
sure,
companies for an opposite reason that
sure.
I do. Like when Marvel makes it, like, we both hate Marvel, right? Because, well, I hate Marvel because they just made a movie that justifies, global warfare. They hate Marvel
Because
because
there's
it's
women in
woke,
it. Yeah.
because there's women in it,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. Um, I
So,
I
and I say that, and I say that to say that if I'm going to join hand in hand with a conservative, I need them to do two things. One, go into reality, and we need to join hands on the basis of something that's actually real and something that's actionable.
sure,
I'm not
but
just gonna. Go ahead.
no,
Go ahead.
yeah, I would fully agree with you. I wouldn't say that everyone's convertible. Is that a word? I just keep thinking of a car every time I say
Yeah,
that word.
yeah.
Convertible. I don't think everyone's convertible, but I think that we tend to say that 0% are. And I
Mm.
think that I would
Yeah, that's
rather
not
us
true.
reach out to
That's not true.
everyone and then maybe
Yeah,
snag 1 or 2% of the people,
yeah,
and that will be enough. That will be
yeah.
like that. I think
I'm also just trying to make the Republican Party as politically irrelevant as possible
sure.
because we don't need Republicans.
Uh huh.
And this is going to be another hot lefty take.
Uh huh.
This whole thing with like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and all the rest of them, where like we need to join hand in hand with our brothers on the other side of the aisle and get things done or whatnot.
Hmm.
They're not Republicans. Just ignore them. Like we like
But
I'm sorry, but
here's the thing.
Like Mitch McConnell is literally Satan. Like I don't want to work with Mitch McConnell.
But
I want to convince everybody who supports Mitch McConnell that Mitch McConnell's the devil.
for sure. But we can't do that when we have a 50-50 split in the Senate because we get one Joe
Lefties also
Manchin.
don't vote. Lefties vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
Every anarchist listening to me right
So
now,
fucking
vote.
based.
You have state and local offices that have houses, and the only people who vote for these people are boomers. Okay, vote.
So
Lefties
goddamn
vote.
based. I think this is my biggest frustration with the leftist movement in general. This is the biggest thing that I push back with on like TikTok, which is why a lot of people call me, I don't know, conservative or whatever, just because
Yeah,
like
right. And
whatever.
like I said, if you're like if you're not any more right than I don't know Che Guevara, then
Yeah.
you're a fascist. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, but like I have zero qualms with any leftist who's willing to vote for a Democrat. I have zero qualms,
yeah.
even if you
Oh,
decide
blue
not
no
to
matter
vote.
who, blue no matter who, blue no matter who, all the way.
I
There are
think you
limits on
can.
that, but
Sure.
still,
I yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of freaking. I think there are a lot of. Fuck! I totally just lost my train of thought. Um, God damn it! What were we just talking about? I'm sorry.
lefties not being in
Yeah,
politics.
yeah. My biggest frustration. You don't even. I won't even get frustrated with you if you don't vote. As long as you're contributing to your community and like the anarchist mutual aid programs, like
Mm.
like I could never be frustrated with like people who invoke like the Black Panther method of just like let's feed the my youth, let's get in like our community. I'm never gonna talk shit about these
Bunch of
people.
communists, by the way.
I I
Just
no
saying,
no no
just saying.
absolutely no absolutely, but I don't have any umbrage with these people. I think they're fantastic people who work with their
Right.
community. I just get pissed off where people start invoking communism when I consider it like this really uplifting idea of like building a community like the Black Panthers
Mm-hmm.
did, or like this idea of mutual aid is so awesome and so beneficial,
Mm-hmm.
and they just sit and dick around on their phones all day and like
Yeah,
don't interact with any person outside of
yeah.
their system.
And communism is when you tell lefties on sorry, when you tell liberals on Twitter if they voted for Joe Biden, then
They're
they're a
fascists.
fascist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what
Exactly.
communism is. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what Marx would have wanted. Marx actually guys, turns out that it's actually really based when you don't do anything to actually improve anything about your
God.
society, but all you do is sit on YouTube and sit on Discord channels and and blow smoke of each other's asses and tell each other that everything will be okay if you just I don't know post memes and I don't like Biden.
This sucks
Yeah.
so much because like I feel like I'm I'm throwing myself into the fire because I'm trying to like start streaming and starting it on Twitch where this is the entire audience and they delude themselves into thinking this is 100% of the population
Yeah,
is where I'm the
yeah,
crazy person for feeling like we need to vote and like
yeah.
Yeah, so it's it's kind of just a recipe for disaster. But I want
Mm.
to start encouraging people to like. I want to start encouraging leftists to start voting. I think it's that's one of the best things that we can do to build like a
Mm.
coalition because those are the easiest people to convert right now because all of
You
their
know what's
morals
really
are right in
easy?
the right place.
You know it's really easy,
Yeah.
because all of our positions are right,
Hmm.
by just actually taking political power and then showing conservatives that none of their policies work.
Yeah.
Like literally, when I say that I want no, like I just don't, I want to take as much political power away from Republicans as possible. I don't mean that I want to like kill Republicans. I quite literally just want to make their lives better. Like I want to take the reins of power away from them
Uh-huh.
and then show
Show them
them
what's
what
good.
we can
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Like I want to just be like, and when they're like calling me like a libtard for believing that, and I don't know that like 6 year olds can like know their gender identity or whatever. I'll be like, right. Here's your free healthcare.
Yeah.
You're not going to get evicted this month. Here's wages for your elderly parents. Yeah, yep, I'm a libtard. I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Here's free college. Just I want to take as much power away from them and start
Hmm.
fixing these people's lives. Because the
Yeah.
best thing that you can do for people is just to fix their life. Just fix their life.
I would pretty much agree with you. The only thing that I would say is that we also kind of can't we have how do I say this? It has to be popular when we do it.
Yeah,
And like
yeah. I see what you're saying.
I guess
Popular means 51% though.
what oh, absolutely.
That's what I mean.
Absolutely. No, no,
I'm
no.
memeing. Sorry,
Absolutely.
I'm memeing. I'm
No, no,
memeing.
no,
I'm
no, no.
memeing.
I'm not. I'm not memeing. This is absolutely correct. 51%. Let's take over. Like I'm,
Yeah.
we get 51 senators who's on our side, and let's start changing
Yeah,
shit.
as long as we don't have like mansions and
Mansion and
cinemas.
cinema, sure, sure.
I honestly just wish, and I'm obviously like, and I think anybody watching this knows that I'm a Vosh fan. I'm literally wearing his shirt.
Who is
But
that? Vosh? Is that what you said?
Vo- yeah, yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
the streamer,
Yeah,
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 little known political streamer Vosh,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was talking about, and it's kind of a conspiracy theory, but I think one that has a lot of merit, that Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema aren't actually the only ones that are against, that they aren't just the ones that are Satan, but there's like a bunch of Democrats, and it's not necessarily politically advantageous for them to all vote no when only a couple of them have to. Let's say
I
20 senators actually just agree with Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, but they don't necessarily want to say it, then they can just let them just be the naysayers and then just be like, oh, well, I voted yes on it. And then they know it doesn't happen, so they don't care anyway.
I would agree. Well, I don't agree with this. I don't
Yeah,
agree with
it's
this.
a
I was
conspiracy
no, no,
theory.
for
It's
sure.
a
And
conspiracy theory.
that's
Yeah.
one of my biggest things is that I don't feel like it's
And
really
it's a
founded.
plausible one,
I
though.
don't think
It's
it
a
is. I
plausible
don't
one.
think it is. I'll say this. I'll say this. The only pushback that I give is that Joe Manchin is popular. Joe
Yeah.
Manchin, what he
Oh, like
did
in West Virginia?
in West
In West
Virginia.
Virginia? Yeah.
In West Virginia
Yeah.
for his state. His state is a deeply red state, and that type of Democrat is the only type of Democrat that would fly. And when you ask the people of West Virginia, hey, would you rather have a Joe Biden or a Joe Manchin in power? They say
Yeah.
Manchin
They want
every
Joe
day.
Manchin.
And like
Yeah.
I think that's my biggest frustration is like people think that voting or a democracy isn't functioning when they see these things happen. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
the democracy. This is America right here,
Yeah.
showing its skin, showing its like what it
Ugly
believes.
teeth. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I guess the only solution to this is making West Virginia and Arizona not states anymore. I said it anyway. Moving on.
Or fucking abandoning the electoral college and like, or well, I guess that doesn't really work in a Senate.
Well, I do want to abolish the Senate, but that's a completely different.
Sure,
That's a completely
I'm
different
not
talk for a
even.
different day.
I want as close to a pure democracy as we can get, and that
Yeah, we don't.
involves abolishing the
Can we
electoral
just have
college,
this? Can we
ranked
just have this
voting.
2 minute conversation? Do we need a Senate really? Like, or is the House of Representatives, is that enough for checks and balances?
I
I don't see why
100%
we
agree
need
with
those.
this. I 100% agree
Just
with
make
this.
all these senators representatives
The
and then
idea that
leave.
half of Rhode Island and half of California get to have the same it's
Yeah,
it's a
it's wild.
little like I don't even think the founding fathers if they looked at the proportionality of like the
No,
states
you're
cuz
like
like
what?
it's not like I'm not saying that like Virginia. I think Virginia was the biggest state when like
Mhm.
in the 13. Well, it was the biggest
Yeah, sounds
colony
about right.
essentially, and
Yeah.
I don't know what the smallest one was. I don't think it's even close. Oh, and I don't know. This is speculation. I have no idea what the numbers
Mhm.
are, but you know, this
Yeah.
is it's absolutely ridiculous that those mean the same thing. That
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
Alaska
because
is red.
there's just a lot of racists in Kentucky or Kansas or wherever Mitch McConnell's from,
Hmm.
that Mitch McConnell
Uh,
literally just gets to be Beelzebub to the entire country
yeah.
because he has so much political power that no Republican, even if a Republican wanted to join the Democrats,
Hmm.
they wouldn't without Mitch McConnell's go ahead because
Hmm.
he's just the evil Koopa turtle.
I listen.
He's-
I'm not disagreeing with a word you're
I,
saying.
I love I love making fun of Mitch McConnell with
I'm all
straight up
about
names. It's
it.
my favorite
I feel
pastime.
like I'm so grateful that uh like I feel like I've been arguing too much with people who share my values, and I appreciate you coming on and being like, no, these are the real
Yeah,
fucking assholes around this country. Like
yeah, yeah.
these guys are the
No,
real.
like later, I guess later we can like debate over, or we can get into a Magic conversation and debate there
Oh
because
hell yeah.
Magic players love being spicy. We never agree on anything,
Uh-huh.
except our cumulative hatred for Watsy or Hasbro,
True.
whoever you want to blame for the current state of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
No, but this was fun though. This was
Yeah,
this was fun.
absolutely. I really appreciate it. This is my first stream. I'm gonna upload this to YouTube. I'll let you know when it's up. I might clip a
Yo,
couple conversations that or a couple things, put them on wherever TikTok,
yeah,
wherever. I'll figure it out, and I'll just keep you updated. Anytime you want to have a conversation, anytime you see any of
hey
my
man.
content, and you're like, I need to correct this idiotic take here. Please do. Or if you want to just have another conversation, I'm all about it.
But real quick, I am
Yeah.
so thankful that you even had me on, because you didn't necessarily have to. I was just some idiot in your comment section, explaining what was like the first what was like
I
the
don't even
first thing that
remember. I
I
can
think
try
it
to
was,
find it
I think it
again.
was just about communism.
Uh
I think it
huh.
was just about like communism. I think you probably said something about communism, and I don't even think we were really disagreeing. I think I just like cleared up a couple definitions or whatever.
Yeah.
But I honestly thank you for just having like a random person. Aren't you glad I went crazy though? Because that could have been crazy.
I kind
I
of
could have been.
I kind of want to poke the bear and just see what kind of crazy person I can get on because that's it's fun and it's good
You know,
content. So like,
I could have been wild. I could have been a
yeah,
black nationalist. I could have. You
I
don't know. I
want
could
yeah,
have. I could have. You don't know what you could have gotten. You got a
sure,
rational lefty. Okay, we're not all just
absolutely,
nice. All right,
absolutely.
but no, I thank you for having me on. I'll definitely keep in touch. We probably need to like play Magic or something,
I'm so
so
down,
that we can yell at each other.
so down. Well,
But yeah,
yeah,
this was fun.
yeah. Let's call it a stream. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you and subscribe. Well, what do you want to plug anything? You said follow you
Yeah.
on TikTok. What's your
God.
ad again?
Yeah. What is my ad? I don't know.
It's
I made that. That it's a stupid name. It's currently. You can find me at Young Pyro 056. It'll probably be in like
sick.
the description or whatever. Just put it like a little card or whatever you do. I don't know how editing works.
Sweet.
Anyway, yeah, it's Young Pyro 056 on TikTok. I'll probably be changing that at some point. So you find me if you find me.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
All right. Thanks so
See
much.
you later, YouTube.
See
Yeah.
ya.
Yeah. See you later.